All right, so we've talked about supply, we've talked about demand. Now let's see what happens when we bring them all together. We bring both of those two dynamics together, because really, if that's what the demand curve looks like, and we add in a supply curve like that, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about bringing in two completely different dynamics. And so it looks something like this, okay? Now, price is always on that side, quantity is always on that side, that's always zero. What can we talk about supply and demand together? Well, the first thing that I want you to know is where these two curves intersect tells us something very unique about this market, right? Because remember, what's our definition of a market? It's where buyers and sellers agree upon price and quantity. And da-da! That's what is happening right here, right? This is telling us the price that buyers and sellers have agreed upon, right? And the way to think about this is, again, if in your mind you can sort of dissect these as two separate curves, then what you can do is you can see that this price is the only price where the quantity supplied equals the quantity demanded, right? Because at every other price, the quantity supplied and quantity demanded is going to be different. But we call this the equilibrium price. I'll put a little E there for equilibrium. So the equilibrium price, I'll say that again, is the only price in which the quantity supplied, so equilibrium, we'll say equilibrium quantity, is the only quantity, or that price is the only place where the quantity supplied equals the quantity demanded, which is in fact what the equilibrium quantity is, right? So that's said to be the market price, because buyers and sellers have agreed, and they've agreed in terms of quantity supplied and quantity demanded, okay? So that's one way to sort of, or one thing to recognize or to understand. The other thing to recognize and understand is any price that's not the equilibrium price and what effect that has on the market. So let's take a price that's actually below equilibrium, okay? Let's say, we'll say P1, right? So what's happening there at P1? Well, let's see. As I go through, what's the first curve that I hit? I hit the supply curve, okay? So if I'm gonna put some numbers in here just to kind of make it interesting. If I say at the price P1, at that price, I intersect the supply curve at 5, but look, as I continue to go on, I intersect the demand curve at, let's say, 15, okay? And for right now, I'm just gonna get rid of this equilibrium quantity. So what's going on there? Well, here's what's going on. We can say that at a price of P1, the quantity coming off the supply curve, quantity supplied is 5, and the quantity demanded is 15, and the condition, and 15 is bigger than 5, so the condition where the quantity demanded is greater than the quantity supplied, what's that called? That's called a shortage. Right? The quantity, so, you know, let's say we're talking about toilet paper, right? So let's say at this price, the quantity that's supplied to the market is a low number, but all of a sudden the quantity demanded from buyers is huge, and when you have more buyers demanding a greater quantity than is being offered to the market, that's called a shortage. And yeah, we've seen shortages here recently, real world, in terms of toilet paper and paper towels and other things like that. And now here's the catch. How does a market clear a shortage? The easy thing to remember, the easy answer, is that any price that is not the equilibrium price is trending or trying to get back to equilibrium. So at P1, that's a price below equilibrium. So what are the market forces on that? The market forces are for that price to increase. And that's exactly what you see, right? I mean, anytime there's a shortage, the price of stuff goes up. And, you always see in the newspapers about, people taking advantage of that and price gouging and stuff like that. But what they don't understand is basic economics. It's not price gouging. It's a market that's in a shortage. That's how markets clear shortages. They increase the price, okay? Now, look what happens. If I pick a price that's higher than equilibrium, so let's say P2, way up here, okay? So at that price, at a high price, what's the first curve that I hit? I hit the demand curve. So we'll make that a 3 just for our purposes here. And then I can continue on at a price of P2, and then what curve do I hit? I hit the supply curve there, and we'll say that's 20, okay? I'm just making up numbers here. All right, so at a price of P2, which is above equilibrium, what's going on with the market? Well, we hit the demand curve here, so this is going to be quantity demanded, and we hit the supply curve here, so this is quantity supplied. And what do you call it when the quantity supplied is greater than the quantity demanded? That's called a surplus, right? Because the market is flooded with whatever it is product we're talking about here, and the quantity that buyers want to buy is way, way less than the quantity that sellers have provided to the market, and we have a surplus. And generally, you as buyers, you like surpluses. Why? Because remember, any price that isn't the equilibrium price is always trying to get back to equilibrium. So how does a market clear a surplus? Well, look at P2. What is P2? What has to happen to P2 to get back down to equilibrium? It's got to decrease. In fact, that's what happens, right? That's known as a sale. And who, as a buyer, doesn't love a sale, right? Because that's all a sale is. That's how a market clears a surplus, is they offer reduced pricing, sale pricing, and the price drops, gets back into equilibrium, and there you go. And again, it's good to have a fundamental understanding of economics. I'll go back to what I said before. People that get mad at price gouging, like, they're charging so much for that milk, they shouldn't do that. Well, wait a minute. If you're going to say that, then you have to say, look, in the wintertime when all those bathing suits go on sale, then nope, you can't pay, sale price. You've got to pay a full price. So again, generally speaking, this benefits buyers. A sale price, clearing a surplus, benefits buyers. Clearing a shortage, like we talked about before, benefits sellers. And they're just two sides of the same coin. All right? Yeah. So let's stop there, and then we'll continue on talking a little bit more about supply and demand.